New Year's resolutions suck, but I do them anyway. And I've done them for 20 years and you should do them too. But they still suck. And I'm gonna explain why and how can you make them suck a lot less. Depending on the source, a little over a third of Americans, so let's say 37%-ish of Americans set New Year's resolutions and goals. And depending on the source, only about 7 to 12% report that they actually did what they promised to themselves. So why is that? Why doesn't New Year's resolutions work? Or what do people get wrong? And in this video, I want to cover 3 reasons why I think New Year's resolutions do not work, and also how you could make them work for you with a different approach. I got into goal setting myself well over 20 years ago in my late teens, and pretty much ever since, every year I've been setting goals. And as part of that journey, my whole life has changed for the better. In general, I've learned a lot during this time, and I've come to realize that traditional goal setting is BS, and that most people get goal setting totally wrong. And there are 3 reasons why they get it wrong. And I think that the statistics prove it out. If you look at the polls of what people set up as goals, the annual New Year's resolutions are almost always exercise more, eat healthier, save money, lose weight. So these are very vague things. And if you ask them like, how much money, how much should you weigh? It's always like a round number, like, oh, I want to lose 10 pounds. Or if you have a more long-term goals, people always say, I want $1 million. Like, why $1 million? Well, it just sounds like a great number. I'm a millionaire, right? And over the years, I've seen that this is very problematic. Setting goals that are vague almost immediately set you up for failure. Secondly, instead of wanting a Ferrari or wanting a 6-pack, like, what is the feeling you're trying to achieve? It's probably a much more sustainable way to set goals and resolutions, and then really getting really detailed on how you feel about that. The second issue people have with setting goals is that they don't know what's a good goal. Like, they don't have a range, they don't have a realistic baseline, and they don't understand what is possible, positive or negative. And there's a lot of studies about us humans, is like, if you ask 1,000 people, like, how intelligent are you? Or how caring are you? And based on an average, people tend to rate themselves higher than average. For example, like, if people want to exercise or lose weight, you ask people, hey, what do you think is your body fat? And then you put them under a DEXA scan, you realize that most people think they're a lot leaner than they actually are. And they're much more fat or obese than they think they are. So having a realistic baseline is very important. And this is very true also for like time management. People often lie to themselves on what they use time. Say it's like, I don't have time, I'm too busy. But then if you track people's social media use, which I'll talk about later, and actual time use, you'll realize that not so great. Same with money. A lot of goals are around saving money for a specific purpose or just having a financial buffer. And then when you look at people's actual use of money, it's often very different. The stories they tell themselves are very different. If you're interested in this, Ramit Sethi has an amazing podcast and now a Netflix show where he just kind of dissects people's lives, and just the stories we tell about our own finances are often not aligned with reality. So having a realistic baseline and an understanding of what is possible and what's not possible within the set time frame, whatever that is, 30 days, a year, 5 years. The third and last is that people forget. We have bad memories. Like, do you, for example, remember what you did a week ago or a month ago, or things like that? You forget really easily. There's a lot of input coming into us, and if you don't get reminded of something, you often forget it, right? But then when you get reminded of something all the time, let's say in social media, people are posting about things you want to get, you get reminded of things you don't have, making you less happy, right? So how can you set up goals better? Here's 3 things I do myself that I think would be very helpful, and I don't hear all these like self-help people online really talking about any of these. The first one is, how can you get really clear on what's the feeling you want to have about a certain thing? I have an easy way and a hard way. I'll start with the hard way. The hard way is that you take multiple hours of time and you try to close your eyes, get to a comfortable place, and think about a perfect day and describe everything that happens in a perfect day for you. And describe the feeling you have of each phase of that day. And try to get to the detail of like, when you wake up, what's the first sense you notice? Maybe your eyes are closed, maybe you hear the sound of water. What do you smell? What do you, when you touch the bed sheets. Where are you waking up? Who next to you are waking up? Get really detailed and try to kind of audit and understand better what are the feelings you want to have during that day, and then try to build your goals around those feelings. The easier way is just to audit yourself for like a week. You might have heard somebody go on a weight loss program. They track their calories for, let's say, a week, and then the coach looks at it. You could do the self for yourself. Have either on your phone or a notebook, just a plus and a minus. And for 1 week, just trying to register a really positive feeling you had and then a negative feeling you had. And it's like, oh, that sucked. That was good. And try to kind of find place where you understand what are the feelings you're really after, and then build goals around those feelings. The second problem I mentioned, people don't know their baseline. And I think the two most common resources that people should focus on is time and money. The other one is, I would say, attention, because time can be split to actual 24 hours, but also like the focus time. And if you are focused on health goals, you should probably also do a thing like a DEXA scan, some sort of mobility strength exercises. There's plenty of experts you can hire online or in person for very little money. But what I do is I audit 3 things between kind of Christmas and New Year's with my wife. The first thing I audit is my calendar. I use Google Calendar to organize my life, and I go through the whole year. And similarly with the plus and minus system, I note things that during the year that were positive and things that were not so positive. And I look at the calendar, and it's ridiculous how much I don't remember. It's ridiculous. I don't remember I went to a foreign country, like I've forgotten it. Like in 12 months, I've forgotten most of these things. And by going to calendar, I can actually see what I spent time on. I noticed that I'm on these meetings, like 4 or 5 meetings in a row over Zoom. And I'm like, that's no fun. And I try to audit that. Secondly, I download all my credit card and bank statements. This takes a while, but I actually look at what I spend on money on. There are tools, online tools. I'm not gonna, endorse any of them here, but there are many online tools if you Google and do some search that can analyze your finances if you allow them access to your credit card data. And that you can see how much money you actually spend on different categories. But by looking at the money, I might think like, I don't spend that much money. Like I'm very frugal. And then I realized I've spent $340 to buy my kid like Hot Wheels toys. And I'm not saying is that the $340 is that much, but like it was surprising. Like that's a lot of money for Hot Wheels in a year. So by looking at different costs, you can better understand the reality of where you're spending your other big resource, which is finances. The last one is attention. I look at my photo reel. I look at every photo and video I've taken during that year. Again, takes a while, but it tells me what was deserving of my attention and my interest. And it's not so much about the quality of the photos. I take pretty photos actually, but it's more about like, hey, I thought this was of deserving to pull my phone, take my camera and take a photo or video of it for whatever reason. It showed where my attention went. And I think it's another way to good audit. Out of all this thing, I hope to find patterns of things that I was maybe subconscious to or not fully honest with myself on things where I could get better. Good news is usually when I do this, it's very obvious to me, if I'm honest with myself, on areas where I can improve in my life with my time, my money, my attention. And now I also do things like strength exercises and DEXA scans as like a check-in for health. I do blood work roughly 4 times a year, also to check on my health stuff as I'm getting older. The last thing about the sustainability of once you do these, I think the most important thing is that you have to look at them pretty much monthly. There are a lot of extreme ways I've done to make sure I hit my goals. I used to do these challenges with my friends where we would both choose a goal or 2 goals that were most important that year. And if we didn't achieve it, we had to do something shitty. The most extreme ones I've had is like, if you fail on the goal, you had to take a tattoo that say, I didn't do the goal. And I have a friend who has a tattoo in his armpit because we didn't classify where it could be. So he did the smallest tattoo in his armpit that he didn't accomplish his goal. These are more extreme ways of accountability, but accountability can be huge. I actually had at one point, I created a video of all my goals and I would watch it every morning at breakfast. It was like a 2-minute video, but it had like my goals set up for life, not just for that year. It was like my own autobiography Sounds really weird. And in that autobiography, it would remind myself of standards and values and things I wanted to live by. So I would remember them every single day of the year. But looking at them at least monthly, ideally weekly, to remind yourself of where you are. You could also put post-it notes on like fridges and mirrors and all these things like you've probably seen other self-help people do. But the point is you got to look at them and remind yourself regularly of them and have some sort of check-ins. If you have a physical goal, I recommend joining a race or some sort of, it's hard to keep yourself motivated at the gym or running or something the whole year. So having some check-in points throughout the year, like sign up for a 5K and a 10K and a half marathon during the year. So you have kind of like things to look for, because 12 months can be a really long time period for anyone. Okay, so to wrap it up, I think goals are very valuable, but as how people set up New Year's resolutions, they're kind of doomed to fail and the statistics prove it. So how can you get the best out of it without the falling into the downsides? And it all comes down to really knowing yourself. And I think this is a lifelong journey for all of us, but like the more self-awareness you can have, the probably better goals you set, the more likely you're to achieve it. Secondly, I do think that even the people who are really self-aware, we're still human. Like we still forget stuff and we forget our goals, or we lose motivation, or we lie to ourselves subconsciously about where we are. So having these like both check-ins and kind of accountability is helpful for anyone, even somebody who's set these goals for 40 years and is like total Zen Buddhist master. We're still human. So accepting it and being comfortable with it. And then finally, build systems that support what you're actually trying to get. After all, like life is surprising things happen. And the more you've set the goals around the feelings and having flexibility on the approach, be religious about the direction where you're headed towards. But you know, sometimes there's a storm ahead. You maybe take the long way out. It's a safer place, that's fine. But stay committed to your goals, but flexible in the approach.